This is a conversation with Suneet Pansare. He's a design strategist at KTw&x Global with a master's in industrial design from MIT Institute of Design in Pune. He's also the founder of Vedika, which is showcased at the Global Grad Show in Dubai in 2019. In this episode, we discuss design with a focus on speculative design, design fiction, future of work, science fiction, AI, and creativity. This is no time. If you like what you see, hear, touch, or feel, then do subscribe on YouTube, follow this channel on Spotify, or rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. This project continues to take a lot of my time, money, and effort, and will to live. So if you'd like to see it continue, then do consider supporting it on Patreon. And thank you to the two people who have already done so. For other forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, or follow me personally. And now, it is no time. So there's a popular saying that everything is designed, but few things are designed well. How would you measure the impact of good design for a field of work that's all around us? One, what is its importance? And two, do you think it's valued enough?
Ooh, that's pretty complex. So,
It's a good start.
so, so here's the thing, right? Let me try to explain this with the help of an example, right? So, Tesla, the car, is I think a pretty good product. They're solving a great problem. But the thing is, what happens is most often when you try to solve a problem, you're solving it for a maximum of 3 or 4 stakeholders, right? And we don't really fathom the um, like the various connections that those or the ripple effects that come from solving that problem, right? So Tesla is a great product, but recently there was an announcement that Tesla is going to start their production and also sell their vehicles in India. Now, great, right? Great for renewable energy, great for climate change. Yes, right? Tesla cars are coming in India. Just imagine in a few years. Now, you're going to plug in the charger into your car to charge, right? So electricity is being used. Now, the thing is, 70% of electricity that's generated in India is generated from coal, right? So, have you really solved the problem? Is this great design? So that it's really hard to put proper metrics to this, but the whole idea is to sort of make sure, and there's this whole movement, right? This is how it's come, right? There's this whole movement of user centric design, but now it's changing to there's this design community which is actually putting forward society centric design, right? We need to be thinking about what are the animals, what are the birds, what are the plants. We need to be thinking about then, and then when you try to solve a problem and try to create a design which caters to multiple stakeholders and also captures the ripple effect on stakeholders associated with those stakeholders, and that's where you actually make a good design.
Do you think it's easier to spot bad design in comparison to good design? Because it feels like, by its nature, good design is a lot more intuitive, a lot more seamless, goes unnoticed, but bad design really stands out.
Yeah, it does, but also what is intuitive, I've often noticed, especially with say and so Apple has pretty much done a pretty good job in creating intuitive products, right? But they've also and this is something Neil Ayal talks about, right? You've just got yourself hooked onto the product, so that's also bad design. So so this is a very difficult question to answer, and I often face this dilemma of whether what I've created is a good design or bad design based on multiple things. So it could be a good for someone, but it could be bad for another person. So yeah, it's really difficult to spot bad design. Also, um, there's this whole theory about the Don Norman's doors, which where usually when you push a door, or when you're entering some place, you naturally push a door, right? So why do you need to have a handle, right? You can just have. So there are these theories, and there are theories where you need to tap into the behavioral economics of person to really create good design. But I also think it could have negative impacts. So it's this is a very complex thing, and what we do now as designers is somewhere create those constraints and say, okay, this is what we are actually trying to achieve. And mostly in industry, it happens to be what's the ROI that's generated, right? Because that's how business works. That's how a world works. So then it becomes a little easier to say, okay, this is good design or bad design, but otherwise not.
For a long time, it felt like design or designers were more artistic, a lot more creative, and researchers, engineers, scientists are viewed as these theoretical, boring, geeky people. You started off studying chemical engineering. So looking back now,
my past life.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that as under wraps. So looking back now, can you find elements of good design in the work that you did in engineering, or do you think these are two fields that are still on two opposite ends of the spectrum?
No, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan about of combining two different industries. And so yeah, to give you specific examples, um, well, I can talk to you about, well, not specifically chemical engineering, but a chemical engineering company, a chemical company basically. And one of their innovations, or one of their uh, I think on some way I would say it was design-led innovation, was so they created uh, what happens was there was a chemical factory which was creating, and this is actually, I can take the name, Marico was creating parachute oil, right? And again, it's actually a chemical formulation at the end of the day. But what used to happen is, in their company, they used to and this was set up in Kerala, where the unions are stronger. It's a communist state, right? So it would happen that people would get disinterested in the work and just walk out, just or the unions were so strong that they would revolt against the management. So great design came out there was from the human resource professional, right? The head of human resource at that. He said, okay, after factory hours, let's create like how we have in schools. Let's create separate houses and separate, basically sects within the groups of people at the plant workers, and let's have them compete in sports activities, right? So what happened in that was, everyone was just like, after work they were just, what their mind went to was, let's go and let's play the sports and let's win. And they had that whole sense of community there. I think that's great design, or that's great innovation. Yeah, because in fact for Marico, then after that, all those union strikes sort of went away, and they were able to run their business pretty well. So I think that's great. Again,
Yes.
great design there.
So design can fit in every field.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just fast to find. Okay, so then as a follow-up question, do you think every person can be somewhere on the spectrum of a good designer? So I've not done the level of work or research that you have done, but today if you ask me to design a living room or an office space, I can do a decent job. I won't do a great job as well, because I've not really looked into it. But I have like this very fundamental understanding of, if you ask me to design a table, then maybe I can do a decent job. Once again, nothing too out of the world. Do you think everyone can be a good designer? Or is it a field that's still quite niche?
No, everyone can be a good designer, definitely, because again, it's something very subjective. It's very personal. It's again human centric, and followed by society centric, and that is something every human can associate themselves with. So everyone can be a good designer, definitely.
That's good news for everyone who's listening.
Absolutely. Good news.
Get on it. Okay, so let's dive into it. Before we introduce the topic of speculative design, I would love to set the premise. So I have a question. What is the craziest idea about the future that you've come across? Or if that's too broad, then what is your favorite science fiction movie or book that really made you think for a while?
So one thing about science fiction which I've noticed, and this is not something that I really enjoy, is its marriage with dystopia. It's almost like every science fiction is always associated with dystopia, but that doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But I think there was some. So I think one movie that I really uh, go back to and watch again and again is Monsters Inc. Because it's not traditionally taken as science fiction. It goes under animation in the traditional genre. Uh, but I think, see, now we're talking about gene editing, right? Say tomorrow you have a pet and you want to say, yeah, listen, I want him to, like, there are too many intruders. I want him to shout. I want him or her or non-binary. I want them to like shout at the people who come. So you create, like, you edit their genes and then you create a situation where any intruder that comes into your say compound, this uh, dog of yours is edited in such a way that it could scream, right? Or it could scare the other person, right? Imagine now that turning out on a larger scale, and that's how it leads to Monsters Inc., right? Because then now they've all gotten together and they created an industry where they scare other people and kids, and then that's what sort of leads to um, another level of capitalistic uprising from monsters, from people who we have created. So I think that is something that is very interesting. I think Monsters Inc. Is a movie is something that I really enjoy. Um, I think Back to the Future was another movie that I really enjoyed, but I wouldn't say it was like the craziest. Black Mirror has been pretty crazy, but again, it goes on the dystopic side.
I actually have a lot of questions for you on science fiction as well from everything you spoke about. But before that, I think it's good that we set the premise. So let's start with what is speculative design?
Simply put, it's a technique to reach design fiction, right? So what it means is it's a way of exploring what uh, futures could look like by creating simple artifacts and getting the audience to sort of think and explore that further. Just understand what it means to have these artifacts in the future. So it could be anything. It could be a film, it could be a prototype, it could be something as simple as a statement, it could be a Photoshop edit, it could be a song, it could be literally, it could be an art piece, it could be anything.
So you also mentioned design fiction. Is that the same thing?
So design fiction is a practice. Speculative design is, so to be really honest, this is something that's debated in the design community, but I have come to the conclusion that design fiction is the practice, and speculative design is the technique to reach there.
Do you think speculative design is more important as a way of thinking or like as
Yes.
a thought experiment rather than the final output? So the video or the movie or the prototype that you create, that is good, but it's more important to just get you thinking about the kind of future that might exist or the trends that might be there in the future, how we might be living.
Absolutely. So I think speculative design should be used by everyone. It should be used by literally everyone, every field. Policymakers need to use speculative design. Um, Government employees need to think of speculative futures. Um, Everyone, investors can think about, you can use speculative design. I myself, being a small retail value investor, I use speculative design to sort of stretch the trends of today, extrapolate them into the future, and sort of figure out, okay, which companies could potentially last, and what sort of services and products could potentially last. So I think speculative design should be used by everyone. Everyone.
So it's more of a mental model, more of a thinking framework that you can use.
Yeah. Also, so it's not just for yourself, right? The moment you create something, there's a potential that it could be used by someone or it could be seen by someone. So then it triggers that thought process in them as well. So that's something that is absolutely important.
Do you have to train yourself to not dismiss crazy ideas? I feel like you need this improv technique of saying yes and to every crazy idea that you come across because it might show you a different perspective or there might be some truth to it. Because when I was researching for this episode, I came across some really like ideas that at first I was like, this is definitely not going to happen. Something like there's a machine that you can connect to your mouth that will forage for food because there might not be much food in the future. Or Lexus was creating these cars based on your DNA, or there was these machines that on your first date you can connect with the partner and will show you the compatibility. which would be quite useful. Um,
Yes.
yeah, but a lot of these ideas on first face value sound very crazy. But it feels like if you just explore them further, they might point out something to you. So do you think you need to train yourself to think that way?
To think like,
To just accept all these ideas and then try and explore them further, because it's very easy to be dismissive of it.
even if you're dismissive, right? One thing that it lets you do is sort of critique it. And what happens in that, or when you're dismissive with a reason, right? You say why you're dismissive. So that why is important. That needs to come out. Um, so if you're saying, okay, this cannot happen, why it cannot happen, right? And that gets you thinking, and that gets you, even if you're an engineer who's doing a little bit of speculative design, say you're a mechanical engineer working on cars and you're doing speculative design, right? When you think of why, and you go the next day to solve some problem that you're solving in your company, yes, it makes a big difference to you. It might not come naturally, but it's definitely affecting your subconscious.
Do you think it's a mistake when you're designing something, and this is not just speculative design but design in general, maybe even product design? Do you think it's a mistake to chase beauty? So Renzo Piano once said that beauty is like the bird of paradise. The moment you try to catch it, it flies away.
Ooh,
So
okay.
is it a mistake to chase beauty? Should you not work towards something that looks good?
Traditionally, design was very art focused and very aesthetic focused. Now it's more of a problem solving uh, sort of a field. So when it comes to beauty, but it's very, again, it's perspective. Like, it's very personal, it's subjective. Uh, so from your point of view, you might be, striving towards it, and you might be looking for, yeah, this is beautiful, and this is something that I really want to incorporate. But that might not be true for a lot of other people. So I think, yeah, one must. This is too okay. This is a little confusing how to answer this, right? Because also beauty is broad, so it's very difficult to say
We only ask
how.
difficult questions. I don't know what you came expecting.
Oh damn! This one threw me off. Beauty. Today I'm gonna go and research beauty.
While you think of it, so I also have a question on creativity. So this is something that's constantly linked with these artistic fields. That this is a very creative field or creative sphere. So how do you view creativity? Is someone who's creative is someone who starts on a blank slate and creates something that's completely new, or is it someone who knows that he's inspired from multiple influences and sources and just finds a way of using the sources in a way that's never been done before, making an incremental change? So not creating something that's completely new, but using everything that exists, but making a slight difference to it. What do you think creativity leans towards?
Yeah, so there's this whole model that is taught in the design school, where most of your creative or innovative or design interventions happen to be incremental. Like, it's I think 90%. It's 99%. I think just 1% is someone just comes up with a plane or something, which but that also I would argue is going to that also I would argue is something that someone has seen somewhere. And it's so I am of the strong belief, and I was really glad when one of a very popular designers in the design community, Austin Kleon, said that everything under the sun is designed before. So there's nothing that you're doing new. You're just going to create incremental changes, if any. So there's nothing new. So it's a pretty controversial opinion, because a lot of people think they're doing something really different, but which is true, which with respect to the context they might be, but also it might have happened 200 years before with some other country in some other small town. So
Nothing is new.
Nothing is new. I strongly believe nothing is new.
A lot of controversy on the show already, I must say. But that's interesting. So this stroke of brilliance that people talk about, I just thought of it and it just came to you. A lot of Beatles songs were just like, oh, it just came in a dream, for example. And a lot of artists have dreamed of the visual that they want to paint, or just happen, or they just they talk about like they connected to some essence and it just flew through them, like they were the medium. All of that is
That's
largely
just rubbish. I don't know how people do that. At least
expect hate mail
no, I don't believe in that. That you need to literally like persevere, like stick at your art for quite a, like, Beatles must have written like 500 songs before that song came to them, right? That, and then they could just create a story out of it, saying, oh no, this was like an essence, like. But I don't think it just hits. Momentarily you might feel that, but I personally don't think there's any, it just comes after practice, and that's why that takes me back to my earlier point, which is anyone can be a designer. So
when they talk about
anyone
this,
can be creative.
so they talk about this flow state as well, that
Yeah.
also seems rubbish.
Okay, good point. I recently watched Soul. Did you watch Soul?
I haven't watched Soul, no.
Yeah, they have a whole discussion on the flow state there. So I'm not sure about the flow state because I've also been reading deep work by Cal Newport, and I think he I'm pretty much convinced by the psychology of deep work, and how you just get into one state of mind and just like focus there. So I don't really know the science behind flow, but I know for a fact that it takes a lot of practice. Like no one, you will not meet someone who's just done this or gotten there's no such thing as overnight success. Like overnight they've just like, or they just found something, some essence or something that you're talking about. I don't think anyone can really do that. It comes from your experience, from various stakeholders that you interact with, from friends, family, nature. So you spending 5 years in nature could lead you to something, and then that something might just happen overnight. So that makes you think that, oh, okay.
This reminds me of a dad joke actually. बोल दूं जोर से आ रहा है.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so
Go for it.
so the joke was, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. It's a common WhatsApp forward. So there's something went wrong with this massive flight, this massive plane, and no one could figure out what's wrong. So they were like, "हमको एक expert मालूम है. We'll call that expert in." And that guy came in. He looked all over the plane, looked all over every machine, looked everything through, and he found that one screw was loose, and he fixed it. And then he sent an invoice for $10,000. and then the guys were like, "You just fixed a screw, so why is it 10,000?" He said, "The 10,000 is not for the one screw, but it's for the experience of knowing which screw to fix."
Yeah.
So I feel like this is the same concept in that sense.
Yeah, that's a good story. I think
It's a dad joke. So
that's
so you were talking about science fiction earlier. A lot of questions I have based on that. From everything I've read books or watched movies, it feels like science fiction, the dystopian version, the dark design. Is that a right term for it? Right. It falls into two broad categories. The first is the world of 1984 by George Orwell, which is this totalitarian state, mass surveillance, zero transparency, and Big Brother's always watching you. The second category is the Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, which is more of this social hierarchy with genetic breeding, and you have incentives to stay within your strata in the hierarchy in terms of money, food, partners, or any other luxuries. And you're hooked onto those addictions so that if you spot someone else trying to break through the hierarchy, you will try your best to suppress it. So in a way, all the citizens itself become this mass surveillance system. And if all Black Mirror episodes can also be largely put into these two categories, it's either one or the other. Do you, since this is not something you like, dystopian science fiction, but if you were to speculate on it, which one would you say is more likely?
That's the thing with speculative design or speculations. They're not predictions, so it's really hard to predict. So I would really not predict any of these, but what I would definitely do is really think about these two worlds and think what are those trends of today that are actually extrapolating to those, and really think about whether we need those trends for today. So something like an AI, right? To how much extent do you really want it is a decision that we need to make today. and based on that is how we're going to be, um, you know, creating a tomorrow which has, say, mass surveillance. So I think and this is something that I have researched a lot, and I strongly believe in, and I think I also mentioned this earlier, is the importance of having 2 or 3 different fields working together. So I'm a big fan of, say, a designer working with an artist working with an anthropologist, engineer working with astrophysicist, who's working with a liberal arts, student, so on and so forth. So which one of these two, yeah, I wouldn't be able to predict that, and I'm not even sure I want to be really honest.
Right. Okay, so then let me take you around a narrow field. So the year is 2050, and I'm looking for a job, as always, in my mid 50s. One, what kind of jobs would exist 30 years from now?
So when people usually ask me what is the future of work, and there are many principles or tenets that came out of my research, but about 6 strong ones. But 2 things that are going to stand out is the disappearance of the answer to what do you do, right? So if so now, well, especially in the Indian context, if you're going to any wedding at this point, there's so many people who just ask you, what do you do?
अरे बेटा क्या करते हो आजकल?
Yeah,
और
and
शादी
they're
हुई?
yeah, they're like bunch of relatives who just want to know what do you do. And the thing is, so I know you for a while, right? And I know you're not just a robotics engineer, but you're a great uh, writer. You also have your podcast. You're also a data analytics expert.
Keep going.
How do you
Start
so
over.
so how do you so when I ask you what do you do, what's going to be your answer?
Yeah, obviously, I have a default answer, which is like the professional version, but that doesn't really encapsulate me for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is going to disappear in the future, meaning, and this is something Jeremy Rifkin also says. So he is the strategist for the 4th industrial revolution for China and Germany, and what he says is there's going to be 3 types of broadly like 3 types of things that you're going to be doing, any human being. One is obviously his views, the capitalist economy is not going to go away. Okay, that stays. So you're going to have that one job or one thing that you're going to work on. The second thing is something you're going to be making income from something called a sharing economy, which is essentially something like an Airbnb or Uber, right? And the third thing is that comes out of a zero marginal cost, which is a concept in economics, which says that so there's some jobs that you don't really need anything. You just need a computer and an internet, right? Say YouTubing. So these are the third kind of jobs, and you are going to be encapsulated in these 3 types of work, I'd say, and that's going to define you. So you'll find a comedian who's a comedian at night but Uber driver by the day, which is going to be absolutely normal, and it's happening now. It's actually happening now, and that's going to just extrapolate and go further in the future. So that's the idea of the future of work. So that's one big tenet of what jobs are going to look like in 2050. It's really funny you asked me this because there's so I conducted this experiment where I was like, take a trend of today, and the same question, what do you think it's going to be in 2050, right? What work is going to be like, or just think about how do you envision 2050. So, and this is again a speculative design experiment where there were answers which were really interesting. So people going from something simple as decentralized workforce to someone being like, so there's a very interesting one which was Ramdev Baba teaching yoga on Mars.
On Mars.
Yeah. So
Possible.
it's quite possible, and this is something that's really exciting. So yeah, this is one principle of what the work is going to be like, and there's going to be and the second thing is there's going to be like a need for constant learning. I strongly believe education in the current form will just cease to exist, and there's just going to be a need for um, need-based constant learning, adaptive learning, that's going to happen. So these two tenets will definitely stay.
Are you saying like a structured program like a university will not exist?
It would not exist for the way it is, so in the lectures form, because eventually it could be possible that you're taking lectures on the internet, but what it would exist for is hypothesis building and testing, and just like creating experiments and testing them, and in a very in a very safe environment, which could then be transported in the real world. So yeah.
So let's say I want to study plumbing. So I wouldn't do.
It's funny you always go to plumbing. But okay.
I'm very interested in the field.
Okay.
So I wouldn't enroll for 1 year and do this curriculum. It could be on a need basis. So I have a certain task that I want to accomplish. So I just learn up to that point. Now the next task I want to do, maybe 6 years down the line, I might come back to it. Really?
Yeah. So yeah, because yeah, it could be possible. Because see, that's the thing, right? The first and the second industrial revolution really segmented everyone into a certain job, which hit 9 to 5, and everyone just really doing one thing their whole lives. But that doesn't have with technology and internet especially, that doesn't really have to happen. So you and human beings are very dynamic, very changing interests. So you might want to do plumbing now, but you want to do carpentry later, right? So why not?
It's a very natural interest of mine, yeah. Damn.
Or you want to do plumbing now, but and then there's obviously this whole point about experience that comes, right? So that is the counter argument. But I strongly believe, like, with a changing educational setup, and especially the power of internet, that counter argument won't exist in the future.
So the degree that we have might lose value.
Yeah, definitely.
You told me that earlier. I spent all these years.
Yeah, because I mean, even now there are a lot of questions on degrees, right? It's especially because they're expensive, and people are now questioning the return on investment on those degrees. So I feel it's starting, and I think it's just going to strengthen in the future.
I think we can both agree that anything you can learn in university now you can learn online.
Yeah.
So it's not the learning experience. So what does that degree signify? Really? Fascinating. So you're basically completely dismantling my life. My degree chala gaya, abhi job chala gaya.
No, but university is I mean, that safe space will stay. That I strongly believe that safe space will stay, because that's a place where you can freely create, experiment, test your hypotheses, and so on. So I think that definitely
So the research arms or the labs of them will be more.
Yes.
Interesting. You also mentioned the sharing economy. So is it possible then, if when I go to work, my car becomes this driverless taxi that goes around earning me money, my house becomes an Airbnb that people can stay in for the day, or any other asset. If I have a camera, that can be rented out for the moment I'm not using it. So every single asset that I own becomes part of the sharing economy?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend who I recently met again, and he's an artist, and he has an Airbnb in a hill station in India, and those are his two sources of income. He said, I don't have to worry about my income as an artist, and I can freely practice my art without any constraints, because I have an Airbnb that I sort of host people on. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that would be some possible options for me to work in 2050 when I'm in the mid 50s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Why
Absolutely.
not?
Yeah.
All right. What role do you think AI plays in the jobs that might exist? Would it affect the kind of jobs that will be there? Or is it still a problem that is 100 years down the line?
A lot of future work strategists believe this at the moment. And I have two minds about this, to be really honest. What they say is the jobs that are repetitive are going to obviously go away. And the jobs requiring hard skills are the ones which are next in line. But what will be hit last is jobs that require soft skills. So there's going to be a definite shift in how people are going to work, of the jobs that's going to be existing, because most of it will just there's going to be a shift. There's going to be a radical shift. But I still don't think AI is going to take over. Uh, I don't believe in the dystopian vision of AI just taking over everything. That's for sure.
So a salesman job might survive, but someone who's a receptionist, for example, a bit repetitive, that might go away. Warning signs have been issued, so we can come back to this video in the future. It'll be like these guys predicted it.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna get like hate mail, which I'm now worried about.
It can go two ways. You know, it's like Captain America. The movie.
I think I should have come with like those helmets that Daft Punk used to have.
Oh yes,
like
it's like Captain America in the movie. One scene in the background, there's like this virus ka photo, and then there's Corona beer next to it. They were like Captain America predicted in
it,
2011.
right? Yeah,
this is the same thing.
Yeah, I think Simpsons also have predicted quite a bit like this way.
That's a bit freaky, actually. Simpsons predictions.
Yeah, those are really freaky.
Okay, so we've got a fair idea of what kind of jobs might exist. What kind of workspaces would exist, do you think? Would offices as we know it, would they still survive?
When we speak about work itself changing, so I don't think offices also in their current form would remain the same. But I also think in a very present scenario, right, I do enjoy spending a certain time in a certain space that is not my house. So I think there'll be a hybrid model. At least this is my prediction for the near future. It's really hard to predict what will be in 50 years down the line. But near future, yes, there's going to be a hybrid model of workspaces, and I don't know, the WeWorks and the other co-working spaces have been popping up, and I think that's going to be a comfortable option for organizations than just setting up their own offices. So I think co-working would take off. But yeah, also because it provides that safe space for various different so it doesn't happen that in a co-working space you have same kind of people working, right? It could potentially happen that there's a very different kind of and that creates that learning environment. In fact, the whole Apple the newer campus that they've built, Steve Jobs had the whole idea where people from different departments would come to the center, and then they would discuss and exchange ideas and then go back. Yeah, so I think that way co-working spaces could take off.
I really hope that meetings don't survive, because there's a thing about meetings that can be emails or meetings that can be phone calls. Nowadays, I feel meetings can be TikToks, honestly. Like the amount of stuff you can convey in a normal TikTok, I've learned more from TikToks than a meeting that's gone for 1 hour or 2
Yeah, that's
hours.
a good idea. TikToks,
right?
Yeah. Or have these templatized TikToks for like what do you want to convey?
There's
Right?
a business opportunity.
Yeah.
I feel, and I think even the interview should go away. I'm just giving my wish list of what should go away. What can stay. Ye wala rehne de na, wo wala hata. All that handshakes and like dress up well and all that. A lot of it, I don't get it, man. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm having a ball working in my pajamas.
Right? I actually honestly feel like the pandemic would accelerate this transition into the hybrid model that you're talking about. Because even companies will realize that an office space is quite inefficient in many instances. There are moments where you need to have that collaborative working environment, but for a large part, a lot of people spend a lot of time in commuting, which is a big cost to the company, which they never realize that we can do without.
Yeah, definitely. Just big cost to a human being as well, like personally on the employee who's going.
I mean, you can milk those extra hours out of those people, right? I mean,
Tips for the organizations.
For the ones looking to exploit, I'll give you more. And then I think the biggest realization was that most of the jobs that exist can be done online. You're not really required to be in an office to do those. Apart if you're doing something very hands-on that require to be on site, But a lot of management positions, you don't really have to be there all the time. We have spoken about this in the past, and you've mentioned that there is one element where even the managerial position might be required in office is to put that pressure or to make sure that the goals are met, right?
Yeah, I think coming back to the same soft skills point, I think some things like negotiating, like encouraging, emotional intelligence, I think those kind of things are, well, uh, those are the things that are going to stay, right? Those are the things that will be required. Ultimately, we're still humans and we require human touch. We have not been taken over by AI, nor are we like genetically like, we still have normal arms and not robotic arms yet. So
What role does ethics or morality play in speculative design? Is this something that you have to focus on as well?
so when you create a speculative design, right, there are chances that it is probable, plausible, or possible, and then you have to see where it fits, right, in that. uh, So yeah, ethics is definitely going to play an important role. You need to create your artifacts in that way, and based on those artifacts, you have your audience sort of react to them, and it's actually very open ended. So what might be ethical to one person might not be ethical to another, right? And but to get people thinking about that is very important, and that's why I mentioned that policymakers need to do speculative design because they are really creating those frameworks for people to work in.
So it's more important to just get that conversation started for now.
Yeah, that's the main goal of speculative design, is to get the conversation started and actually go and critique what's happening. It's part of critical design.
Because one of the examples I came across was the one I told you about, where Lexus is using your DNA to customize the car for you. So it would know the seat would be made for you, and the car is also made completely for you. But I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not sure if that's a very ethical way of going about it, because they have access to my genetic code, which is way too much information. I'm not that open as well, you know. So, so it feels like that at some point when you start drawing the line, because this technology will catch on.
Speaking of ethics, right? People who are actually capturing the data of or capturing what your genes look like, they need to be very ethical, or they need to know, or they and there's so many factors, right? So they've been it happens almost in every industry, and it's like when you're creating something and you still have a business pressure that's hanging on top of your head, there are things you're going to be like, oh, okay, let's overlook this, right? We don't have any space for that when you're doing stuff like this, right? We cannot be in a position where we're like overlooking a few things. We need your exact gene. We need a full comprehensive list or data on your genes and how you behave and all your biases and all your behavioral economic factors and how you think fast and slow and how your thinking goes, all of that, right? So yeah, I think only when you have that data and when you can understand that data and structure it properly is when you have the right and basically the right to develop something like this.
Really tough questions that we have to face now, I feel, right? Because let's say with the driverless car, how do you make that choice? Like, who you gonna hit in a moment of an emergency?
Exactly, the trolley problem.
The trolley problem, or social media, the way you design a platform today. What do you maximize on? Do you maximize on likes, follows, or just people engaging? But then they will naturally form the divisive society that you've seen on Twitter, which has become this cesspool of hatred right now. So these kind of questions and conversations really need to be happening now, right? Because we have started.
Definitely, yeah.
Before we start wrapping up, I would love to get your comments on UAE as well. So Sheikh Mohammed had once said that the future belongs to those who can imagine it, design it, and execute it. And it is not something that you await, but something you create. And my personal opinion is that Dubai is one of the few, or if not the only, example of a futuristic city or a city of the future. And we have seen the government's work towards futurology or speculative design. They have a Dubai Future Foundation that's set up, and the Museum of the Future as well that's coming up. That's Superflux is working on, which is quite popular in the field. What do you think of Dubai in terms of speculative design?
First and foremost, right? Museum of the Future itself is what? It's a paradox. Those words don't really go together. Museum and future, but the audacity to think in that way is amazing. It's commendable because you need to really think about breaking the paradigms of today and just think about that's exactly what speculative design is, right? And what's happened is this is probably, I think, in my opinion, this is the biggest experiment of speculative design that I've ever seen, right? The Museum of the Future, to have a whole architect construct a building just meant for and have these amazing installations. And what I really like is their direction towards utopia. So it's not usually what speculative designers say is you really shouldn't be thinking of whether this is dystopia or utopia. You should just see how it affects you, right? But I feel somewhere you need to present some nudges and triggers that take you towards either of the two directions. And I think UAE is, and specifically Dubai, is doing this by taking the step to move towards utopia, right? And I think it's a great initiative. I'm looking forward to.
Do you have an idea of what's going to be in it?
Yeah, so Superflux has, I think, worked on this, if I'm not wrong. At least they did that with the World Government Summit, which is again based. It happened in Dubai. So some of the artifacts, so some of the installations there were on healthcare, on transportation. So for example, healthcare was you'll wake up in the morning and there's going to be a smart mirror which will tell you, oh, okay, you looks like you haven't gotten sleep in a few days. I'll do one thing. Let me notify the workers, your colleagues in your organization, and also your boss. And I'll do one thing. Let me also notify your orange juice maker to put in more vitamins, and then so that you can have more vitamins today and revitalize yourself. So that whole installation was a part of the healthcare section of the World Government Summit. And I think that's something they're going to replicate. So with respect to healthcare or transportation, infrastructure, the city, governments, monitoring and managing happiness. And I think that is something that is that is great. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. The smart mirror is an idea that's been around for a long time. In fact, I worked on one in the days of my youth.
Yeah.
But unfortunately hasn't come out so far. I'm not sure why. It seems like a technology that can be done easily now, because we have the connection, we have the internet's there, and the transparent displays are there as well. But not sure. Would you use a smart mirror if you had it?
Would I use a smart mirror? I think there are too many. It has too many stimulations, so I'm not sure that is something that I want first thing in the morning. But I would consider it later in the day, or I would like it without any stimulations or without any notification, to have a non-intrusive sort of setup where, yeah, my coffee is automatically made to the temperature I like it, or my orange juice already has vitamins without they telling me. So I would like that level of non-intrusive sort of interventions. But the moment it becomes intrusive and they telling you things, that's just like having a nagging parent or something.
Oh, damn. I see. That's how it works, huh? All right. Okay. So before we start wrapping up, love for you to interpret what we've built with the Lego. We can start with your wonderful creation.
Okay.
What do you think that is?
This is a ship anchor. I think so. I hope so.
Yeah, why not?
Potentially.
It looks like a robot to me, but a thick one.
Future of the future of shipping anchors.
Yeah, I mean, it could be any design, right? Is there a specific reason why they follow that design that they have?
Yeah, I think there should be something. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not sure why it is that.
There's a business opportunity here as well. Yeah. It looked like a person. Yeah, I thought this is
But what have you done? What is
what
that?
have I done? Take a guess.
Is it like a? Is it like a? It looks like the International Space Station.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. Actually, that's exactly what I was doing.
The
Good one,
interesting
huh?
the interesting part would be what would together. What would it make?
Oh, let's put it together.
International Space Station with an anchor to the so that people.
It doesn't lose sight of Earth, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it'll just fly away.
Yeah.
That's not how science works. No misinformation on the show, please. Okay. Final questions. What are some books, movies, people that have been very strong influences in your life?
In one of your earlier podcasts, on the earlier episode, I think you spoke about the changing nature of role models, right, in your life. Yeah, I think I strongly believe that, and I've come to a conclusion after a long time that I was seeking something else, but the true role models were right in my house. So I think I mean, this is going to be a boring answer, but my parents are definitely my mom and dad are role models I look up to. My brother definitely. Again, he's someone I learn from every day. So yeah, that's these are definitely ones. External role models.
Sorry, if I could just pause there for a moment. In what ways do they inspire you? And the first time I've heard of a younger brother inspiring an elder brother. Speaking as a younger brother, I've only been treated like trash. So
Ambuj, if you're listening to this.
He's not. He's definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah. So in what ways do they inspire you?
So it's very like okay, to give you an example, right? Very recently I was reading the Almanac of Nawal Ravikant, and also like have been watching his episodes, his podcast for the longest time, and like sort of understanding what are his worldviews and stuff like that. And I realized some of those teachings have already been inculcated in me from my father, right? And I never recognized that until an external sort of entity brought it up and explained it in that probably clear fashion that even probably my dad did, but obviously I had biases working on me, which I was like anyway, I was a messed up teenager, not
wild child.
hormonal. Yeah. So things like these, little things like these, one of the biggest thing that they've inculcated in me is people, right? How to deal, or not just deal, but how to be with people. And I think that's so. It's not really hard skills, or they didn't teach me, math or geography or anything of that sort. They were not like, oh wow, they taught me how to play the tabla, but how to sort of be with a person who's teaching you how to play with the tabla is something that they taught me. So I think that was really important. And yeah, speaking of my brother, I just I learn a lot from him every day. Just the way he navigates problems and stuff like that. Also how he keeps his cool while he's navigating problems. So everything that I am not, he manages to do really well. So I think I look up to that. And yeah, so I think
that's
definitely
a great brother. I must say. I mean, talk about you.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, just as a big brother, having that big brothers have this thing like hum bade hai types. Just to be able to look beyond that and find that there are a lot of things you can learn from even your younger brother. That's remarkable. Also, you were talking about external role models. So yeah, distracted you. Yeah.
Yeah, external. So I don't know, like external role models, like so after a lot of seeking and looking up to external role models, this is where I've come and this is where I'd like to stay. So sure. I think, but speaking of the past, I think someone like I used to really look up to say someone like Sudha Murthy or Rahul Dravid. Who else? I used to also look up to Shah Rukh Khan at one point. I mean, he's achieved quite a bit. But like looking back now,
I find a lot of us used to really like Shah Rukh Khan when you were growing up, but now all of us say that love is gone. Yeah. Oh, bachcho wala pyar wo chala.
Yeah, true. I don't know why that is. But one thing I can never take away is the fact that he's worked really hard. So people who've worked hard in their fields, I genuinely do respect. And I mean, for me, I don't have to put someone on a pedestal for them to be a role model. I think I find my role models in my friends. I learn a lot from you. I learn a lot from like the other people that are there on my friends list. Yeah, I learn a lot from my friends, and I think that I would give them a stature of a role model. I don't want to put like role model doesn't have to be like a Muhammad Ali or
Chuck Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah.
Who needs him?
Yeah. So yeah.
Or if someone wants to get into design, speculative design, what is one book that you can recommend, or maybe a movie, or just someone's work?
Yeah, I think Anthony Dunn is he's the one who's from Royal College of Art London, and his book and his work is he was one of the few people who had started talking about critical design and speculative design, and so I'd recommend that to them. Also, I'm just I don't know, I'm trying to create some templates as well on a personal level, which I don't know, I can make it open source and people can explore. So that's something I'm working on right now, where people can explore and come up with their own speculative ideas and little prototypes, create something. I mean, something as small as this could be eventually, a prototype that you can give to someone and say, use this. This is air purifier that works on AI and purifies everything from your lungs to outside. So, yeah.
What would you like human civilization legacy to be like? What do you think we should do in the next 30 years? Now that you are someone who looks into the future quite often, what path do you think we should hopefully travel on?
So what we need to do for sure right now is look internally before we look externally. That's for sure. Right? So first, as human beings, I don't think we've identified ourselves completely, right? And I'm saying even researchers, say people who are sitting in Harvard and Yale and everyone who's actually researching on the complex, everything from a little neuron to how we make decisions to how our brain acts in different situations, how fight or flight mode is, how is it activated, stuff like that. I don't think that's just. I feel like that's just 5 to 10% of human. The research then that's done up till today is just 5 to 10% of the human body, and there's a lot more that needs to be done before we start making decisions on AI and all these other external factors. So I think first let's understand us internally, understand how we work, and map that before we make a decision in the future.
Interesting. Final question for you. What is the meaning of life?
There is no meaning of life.
You came prepared for this.
I actually, so the moment you put that in, I thought about it, and again, it's really exciting because a month back I watched Soul, and it sort of captures that as well, and that was a very good, pictorial sort of depiction of people running behind meaning of life. But I don't think there's a meaning of life really. It's only after you're born that you have a meaning. Like you create some scenarios around you. You have nurture, nature, whatever, and then that creates, and it keeps evolving. I think that is something that I'd definitely say. Meaning of life is definitely, it's something that's always evolving. So yeah.
There is no meaning. So,
No
Suneet, thank you for coming to the show. If people want to find you in person, online, where can they connect with you?
Thank you first for having me. It's you've completed my lifelong dream of being on a podcast. And no better podcast to be.
You've been watching this since you were a child.
Yeah. So yeah, ever since I was a little kid. If anyone wants to find me, I have my website, suneetpansare.com, and you can obviously hit me up there, and my Instagram as well, which is SUNEET VP, Suneet VP.
Suneet with an N.
Yeah, Suneet with the N.
Sounds good. Do connect with Suneet. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.